Hey friends, Joe here at Reverb. It's hard to overstate the impact and legacy of Black Sabbath and their guitar player Tony Iommi. His playing on their 70s records almost single-handedly created the mold from which all future metal guitar would be cast. His massive riffing power, melodic sensibilities, and techniques are still influencing metal players today. In this video, we're going to have a look at the classic Tony Iommi rig and some of the techniques he employed to create his signature sound. What we have today is a 1969 Laney Supergroup LA 100BL head. This is the exact same year and model that Iommi would employ on the majority of his 70s Black Sabbath recordings. In late 60s, early 70s England, the king of the amp stack was undoubtedly Marshall, though Laney was trying to compete. This was their answer to Marshall's legendary super lead, the Supergroup. This particular amp was purchased off of Reverb from the UK, and like many old amps, it needed some help to get it into working order, so special thanks to Matt at Rebound Repairs for providing some emergency surgery. Huge thanks to our friends at AmpRx for hooking us up with a brown box, which allows you to attenuate the voltage coming out of the wall, allowing you to give finicky vintage amps like this exactly the amount of juice it wants to see. Next, we have the guitar. Tony Iommi famously played a Gibson SG Special. As the story goes, as they were recording their first record, he was playing a Strat, and one of the pickups failed. He turned to the SG and never turned back. Tony's SG, often called the Monkey, is a 1964 Gibson SG Special. This SG was heavily modified over the years, with the neck pickup rehoused and a custom P90 style bridge pickup built by John Birch. He also added a Leo Kwan Badass intonatable wraparound bridge. Further modifications were made to his guitar to accommodate Tony's unique circumstance. As many of you know, he was involved in an industrial accident and he lost the tips of his middle two fingers on his right hand, middle and ring finger. Now, on him, that's his fretting hand. So most of us can imagine losing parts of those fingers on our left hand and imagining how difficult that might be to play the guitar, or how difficult that might be to set forth an entire influential new genre of music. And the irony in the positioning that creates of the hand, I don't even have to make this joke, right? So the frets and the fretboard were customized to make things a bit more manageable for him to play. More on that later. There have been a handful of recreations of this guitar released by Gibson over the years. There was a custom shop version, complete with the Monkey sticker, that goes for over $20,000. There's also a more affordable Tony Iommi SG Special that is still available, going for $24.99 new, but closer to $2,000 used on Reverb. Today, however, we will be using a classic SG Special reissue with the original P90s. Thank you to Chicago Music Exchange for helping us out with that. To me, the P90s is this initial interesting thing about Tony's rig. You think about Black Sabbath, you think about sludgy heavy metal, and you almost immediately associate that must be humbuckers. P90s are technically single coil pickups, but created some of the heaviest emotions that we've got. Tony's tones were mid-rangey, there was clarity to them, and the P90s provided that. And obviously, it's legendary now. The other key ingredient to Tony Iommi's classic rig is one pedal. No, it's not a fuzz or a heavy distortion, it's the Dallas Arbiter Rangemaster treble booster. A super early, very simple one-knob boost pedal that Tony used to get some pick attack and some clarity into his nearly dimed Supergroup. Supergroup was kind of a dark amp, and so this provided some top end, some clarity. The Rangemaster was pretty popular back in the day. Clapton used one, Brian May, as well as others. The originals are rare and extremely expensive for what they are, so we have a boutique recreation here. This is the De Jour from R2R Electric. It uses the classic format, which is built more for sitting on top of your amp than as a pedal, but there are dozens of Rangemaster clones out there, like the Catalan-bred Naga Viper, the Greer Moonshot, Analog Mambino Boost, and there's even a Tony Iommi signature boost from Laney Black Country Customs. So in terms of the rig, it's fairly straightforward. It's fairly simple. It's a guitar, it's one pedal, it's a great amp, like many guitar players from the 70s. But there's something else about it, and when you hear a Black Sabbath song, you get that feeling and you want to play that riff. And I think a lot of that maybe comes from his double tracking and panning. And this is a technique that we've talked a bit about before in a couple of other videos, such as Oasis, and what double tracking does in creating natural variations from take to take, even if it is the same player. It's impossible to play something in the exact same way multiple times. It is physically impossible. When you double track something, the natural variation creates excitement, I think in Tony's case, an eeriness, and a bit of a surround and envelopment into a riff. So there you hear the difference between the single-tracked part and the double-tracked part, and what that creates, and to think that he did this with his solos as well, which also speaks to another the cradle of genius of Iommi, that much of his solos were composed. Because to double track them, it maybe started as an improvisation, but it became a composition that was through composed. And you can hear where things are the same, and then they go off and they start to take some different paths, and then they come back together. Also, with his guitar playing technique, with the bending and the vibrato and the slow vibrato bends, when you double track those things, those variations become these sludgy, mangled tones kind of pulling away from each other that as an instrumental or arrangement technique in centuries past, those would have been avoided. You would have tried to create a tone that was in tune to properly unison, to properly double. But in the realm of Black Sabbath, that almost creates part of the power. It's part of the unease. It's part of this bending, things are not okay, but they're very cool. So it's interesting to think about hearing the impact of Tony Iommi's double tracking in every metal band since. I don't want to say that Tony invented the idea of double tracking, but I will say that the premise of metal almost becomes two guitar players locked in on a heavy riff in unison. It's all doubled, it's all heavy. So perhaps Iommi's impact is far deeper and far greater than we're even giving credit to with this double tracking technique. So next, we're going to come back to Tony's unfortunate industrial accident. And while he was able to create basically prosthetic fingers, it still was difficult for him to play, so he had to modify his guitar further to accommodate. First being lighter gauge strings. In 1970, there weren't as many options for lighter gauge strings, so he turned to banjo strings. Put banjo strings on his guitar, and that then created a different problem and had unintended consequences. First of all, bending and vibrato with such a light gauge string can throw the temperament very easily, and lighter strings are obviously much more sensitive to that kind of wear and tear than heavier strings. So again, these happy accidents which then inform a technique, which then inspire a revolution, a new genre of music. And I should say, when I say happy accident, I'm not referring to a person losing their fingers. So I guess I should say, by consequence of circumstance, this technique came to be. So not only that, but he was unintentionally sharpening the pitch of notes because he was unable to feel the pressure that he was pressing onto the light gauge string. So to counteract that unintentional sharpening of the pitches, he polyurethaned the fretboard to raise it so that it was essentially a higher fretboard so that that bending against the fret wouldn't be happening anymore. So I'm not heavy metal enough to put banjo strings on this SG, and I don't think Chicago Music Exchange would ever forgive us if we returned this guitar with banjo strings on it. But that brings us to another method of creating some slack in your string tension, and that is downtuning. So, similar to the lighter gauge strings, the ease of tension with downtuning guitar could have been easier for Tony to play, but there are conflicting reports too. It could have been to accommodate for Ozzy's vocal range. Iommi is quoted to have said that he wanted to create a darker and heavier sound to differentiate them from other groups at the time. Regardless of the reasoning, by the third record, Master of Reality, Iommi was downtuning a step and a half to C sharp standard. So the combination of C-sharp standard tuning, the sinister melodic sense, and this double tracking to heavy up the riffs, the combination of those things is the offering of doom metal. And it still is today just as much it was in 1971. If you downtune and palm mute and chug on a low E, you are playing metal. You are, that is metal. That is the essence. It's also so fascinating to think about what that would have sounded like to someone's ears in 1971. The Beatles had just broken up. I mean, these ideas of downtuning and sludging things out were new. This was inventive, and it had to have been absolutely wild for somebody to hear that in that time and place. It's rare to discover these findings of like a single point in music history that birthed so much else. So much music and new genre of music was created from these techniques. And I think that's the way that we often like to quantify it and distill it down to a single point. When in reality, that single point is not just one thing, it's a combination, it's a multitude of different things that we talked about. And first of all, that single point is double tracked and it's down-tuned and it is sludged up enough to create enough emotion that influenced the decades since. We've talked about these kinds of things in these videos before, where these consequences of circumstances and these accidents that created a necessary technique to follow then created so much influence. And this is one of my favorite examples and one of the greatest examples of that happening. Tony Iommi birthed doom metal out of necessity and out of the power and hunger of his heart to make these things happen. It's so inspiring and it's awesome. I had a blast talking about this stuff today, and I hope you enjoyed as well. If you got any other Tony Iommi stories, tidbits, leave them in the comments. If you downtune to C sharp standard or C standard or B standard, please let us know. And we'll see you next time.